The screens, they went dark. Or perhaps, they flashed a blood red. Not a warning, but a judgment. A final, irreversible verdict. In November 2022, the glittering, seemingly invincible empire of FTX didn't just stumble, it imploded. It shattered. With a force that sent shockwaves rippling through every corner of the global financial world. This wasn't a slow erosion. This was a sudden, violent rupture. A digital singularity. A black hole where fortunes, dreams, and the unwavering trust of millions were mercilessly sucked away. Overnight, an estimated $8 billion, perhaps far, far more, simply ceased to exist. Vanished. Into the ether. Into the blockchain's unforgiving, immutable ledger of loss. Imagine an entire nation's wealth. The life savings of countless individuals. Pensions. Investments. All gone. Wiped clean. Leaving behind only the digital dust of what was and the terrifying question of what now star. And then came the silence. A silence far more chilling than the initial, chaotic roar. It wasn't the peace of resolution. No. It was the deafening quiet of a catastrophic void. The gaping maw left behind by a financial leviathan. A chasm of broken promises. Broken dreams. The digital echoes of frantic messages, of desperate pleas, of the realization hitting hard that the money was gone. Irrecoverable. For so many, this wasn't just a loss of capital. It was a loss of future. A loss of security. A profound, piercing betrayal that cut deeper than any market crash before it. Because this wasn't just market volatility. This was something different. Something more sinister. A betrayal not just of trust, but of the very idea of a safe, regulated future in the digital age. The air crackled with unspoken accusations. With the weight of collective grief. And beneath it all, a single, looming shadow. At the epicenter of this financial earthquake, standing amid the digital rubble, with an almost disarming casualness, was Sam Bankman-Fried. SBF. A figure as enigmatic as he was polarizing. To the world, he had been presented as a child prodigy. A benevolent billionaire. A mathematical genius in a t-shirt, who ate cereal for dinner and slept on a beanbag chair. The savior of crypto. The ethically driven altruist. He was supposed to be different. He was supposed to build a better world. But the collapse of FTX didn't just expose a failure of judgment. It ripped open a veil, revealing a breathtaking tapestry of alleged fraud, breathtaking hubris, and an astounding web of deception that defied comprehension. How could a man so celebrated, so seemingly brilliant, have orchestrated, or overseen, a disaster of such unimaginable proportions? Who was Sam Bankman-Fried, really? And what dark, unseen currents pulled FTX, and billions of dollars, into the abyss? This is where our story truly begins. In the quiet halls of MIT, amidst the hum of equations and the drone of late-night coding sessions, a young man named Sam Bankman-Fried began to forge his destiny. He wasn't a typical student, far from it. A prodigy in physics, a mind wired for numbers and abstract systems, Sam possessed an intellectual intensity that bordered on the extraordinary. But beneath the veneer of academic brilliance, there pulsed a deeper, almost messianic conviction. He wasn't just seeking knowledge, he was seeking purpose. He was searching for a way to make the greatest impact, a way to truly, fundamentally change the world. This wasn't merely ambition, it was a driving, almost obsessive impulse, one that would soon lead him down a path few dared to tread, a path paved with audacious ideas and unimaginable risks. His journey began not with a bang, but with a quiet, calculated resolve, a decision to dedicate his singular intellect to a cause far grander than himself. Or so he believed. The gravitational pull of effective altruism, EA, became his guiding star. This philosophy, gaining traction in elite academic circles, proposed a radical idea: to do the most good, one must first earn the most money. To maximize impact, to save the most lives, to prevent the most suffering, one should pursue the highest earning career possible, then systematically donate the vast majority of it. For Sam, this wasn't just an ideology, it was a asterisk revelation star. It provided the intellectual framework, the ultimate asterisk justification asterisk, for his burgeoning desire for wealth. The pursuit of immense capital wasn't greed, it was an ethical imperative. It offered a moral license to play the financial game, not for personal gain, but for the collective good. This profound belief, deeply ingrained, would become the bedrock of his empire, a powerful, seductive narrative that would empower his every decision, every gamble, every boundary he chose to ignore. It was a philosophy that could elevate a man to godlike status, or rationalize his deepest flaws. Armed with this potent blend of intellect and ethical conviction, Sam entered the high-octane world of quantitative trading at Jane Street. Here, in the relentless crucible of algorithmic finance, he didn't just learn the game, he mastered it. He witnessed firsthand the breathtaking speed at which fortunes could be made, the intricate dance of arbitrage, the sheer power of code translated into capital. But for Sam, even this wasn't enough. Jane Street was a school, he was destined to be a general. He saw inefficiencies, overlooked opportunities, a nascent market, cryptocurrency, ripe for exploitation. He didn't just want to participate, he wanted to dominate. In a move that startled many, he walked away from a lucrative career to found Alameda Research, his own quantitative trading firm. It was a leap of faith grounded in cold, hard calculation. A bold, almost hubristic declaration to the financial world, I can do this better. I can do this faster. This was the birth of his engine of ambition, a powerful machine designed to generate not just profit, but impact star. He was no longer just a prodigy, he was an architect, building an empire brick by digital brick, driven by a vision that was as grand as it was, perhaps, dangerously misguided. In the chaotic landscape of the cryptocurrency world, one name emerged as a beacon of innovation and ambition. That name was Sam Bankman-Fried, the enigmatic founder of FTX, a trading platform that would soon disrupt the entire industry. With the crypto boom in full swing, SBF saw an opportunity to revolutionize decentralized finance and usher in a new era of digital trading. Armed with a vision and relentless drive, he set out to build FTX from the ground up, attracting early investors who believed in his bold vision for the future. Narration: as the world took notice of FTX's meteoric rise, SBF's reputation as a maverick in the crypto space only grew. With innovative features and a sophisticated platform that catered to both seasoned traders and newcomers alike, FTX quickly became the go-to destination for those looking to capitalize on the volatile world of cryptocurrencies. But it wasn't just the technology that set FTX apart, it was the aggressive marketing tactics employed by SBF that captured the attention of millions around the globe. From high-profile partnerships to viral social media campaigns, FTX was everywhere, solidifying its status as a giant in the industry. Narration: but with great success came great scrutiny, and as FTX continued to push the boundaries of what was possible in the world of digital trading, whispers of regulatory challenges and internal conflicts began to surface. The once unstoppable force that was FTX now faced its own set of challenges, testing the resilience and determination of SBF and his team. As the world watched with bated breath, the fate of FTX hung in the balance, a testament to the volatile nature of the cryptocurrency world and the relentless pursuit of innovation that defined its very existence. He emerged not from the shadows of anonymous digital currency, but into the blinding spotlight of mainstream media. Sam Bankman-Fried. SBF. A name that, for a fleeting moment, became synonymous with a new era of finance, a future where complexity was simplified, and chaos, tamed. The media painted him as a wunderkind, a prodigy in cargo shorts and a t-shirt, fueled by Red Bull and an almost mystical understanding of algorithms. He wasn't just building an exchange, he was building an empire. And he did it with a disarming, almost bashful charm that captivated journalists, investors, and a generation desperate for a hero in the wild west of crypto. His narrative was meticulously crafted, a brilliant mind, driven by effective altruism, intent on earning to give. He spoke of risk management, of regulation, of bringing order to the digital frontier. He wasn't just a CEO, he was a prophet, a philosopher king, promising a better, more secure financial world. This was the birth of the Golden Boy, a carefully polished image, designed to inspire, to trust, and to conquer. FTX wasn't merely a cryptocurrency exchange, it was a phenomenon. A brand splashed across Formula One cars, emblazoned on stadium walls, the FTX Arena, a monument to digital ambition in Miami. Celebrity endorsements poured in, household names, athletes, influencers, all lending their considerable star power to a company promising to be the safest, the most reliable gateway into the volatile world of crypto. Larry David, Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, Stephen Curry, their faces, their voices, echoing SBF's message of trust, of legitimacy. It wasn't just marketing, it was an assurance. Millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, funneled into these high-profile campaigns, weaving FTX into the very fabric of popular culture. The message was clear: if these titans trusted FTX, if SBF was the guiding hand, then surely IT was sound. It was an institution. It was stable. It offered boundless potential, a bridge from the speculative fringes to the solid ground of mainstream finance. An empire built not just on code and capital, but on perception. On an irresistible, seductive dream of a future that felt, for the first time, tangible and safe. Beneath the gleaming facade, behind the endless media appearances, the smiling, unassuming face that graced countless magazine covers, lay a meticulously constructed illusion. SBF wasn't just a media darling, he was a political powerhouse, funneling unprecedented sums into campaigns, shaping policy, becoming a savior not just of crypto, but of political discourse itself. He courted regulators, testified before Congress, presenting himself as the industry's adult in the room, the only one capable of steering this wild frontier towards a responsible future. Every interview, every donation, every carefully chosen word, was a calculated brick in the wall of his impenetrable public image. He was the golden boy, the altruist, the visionary, a beacon of integrity in an often scandalous industry. But the higher the pedestal, the more precarious the perch. The louder the promises of stability, the more suspenseful the silence that followed. For this empire, built on trust and celebrity glow, was not what it seemed. It was a house of cards. A mirage. A breathtaking, dazzling spectacle, designed to distract from the truth lurking just beneath the surface. And soon, very soon, that truth would shatter the illusion, and send the golden boy's empire crashing down. In the shadowy corridors of the cryptocurrency world, whispers began to circulate like faint echoes bouncing off the walls of uncertainty. Industry insiders, those who navigated the murky waters of digital assets with a keen eye for detail, started to raise subtle alarms about the meteoric rise of FTX. Questions lingered in the air like a thick fog, obscuring the true nature of the relationship between FTX and Alameda Research. Was it a symbiotic partnership driving success, or a tangled web of conflicts of interest waiting to unravel? As the spotlight shone brighter on Sam Bankman-Fried, the enigmatic founder of FTX, the whispers grew louder, transforming into a cacophony of doubt and suspicion. The opaque governance structure of FTX raised eyebrows among those who valued transparency and accountability in the fast-paced world of cryptocurrency exchanges. With each passing day, the cracks in the facade of FTX's rapid wealth accumulation became more apparent, like fissures in the foundation of a once towering edifice. Amidst the whispers and shadows, one question loomed large in the minds of many: what lay at the heart of FTX's success? Was it truly a revolutionary platform reshaping the landscape of digital assets, or a house of cards built on shaky ground? As the narrative of FTX's rise continued to unfold, the stakes grew higher, the tension palpable in the air. The whispers in the dark grew louder, hinting at a reckoning on the horizon, a moment of truth that would reveal the true nature of FTX's journey from obscurity to prominence. And as the world watched with bated breath, the shadows cast by FTX's ascent seemed to grow longer, stretching into the unknown, waiting to be illuminated by the harsh light of scrutiny. FTX. It promised a new era of finance, a beacon of innovation, built on the foundations of trust and cutting-edge technology. Customers worldwide flocked to its promise of secure, frictionless trading. But beneath this polished veneer, behind the dazzling lights and slick marketing, lay a secret. A profound, almost unthinkable entanglement that would prove to be its ultimate, fatal flaw. This wasn't merely a relationship between sister companies. This was an unholy alliance. A grotesque, almost parasitic bond between FTX, the supposed guardian of customer funds, and Alameda Research, Sam Bankman-Fried's personal trading firm. From the very beginning, their fates were not just intertwined, they were tragically, dangerously, inextricably braided together. Most exchanges keep a strict, impermeable wall between their operations and any associated trading desks. It's a fundamental principle of financial integrity. But SBF, he built his empire differently. He built it without walls. He built it on a foundation of blurred lines, of access so profound, so unfettered it defied every industry standard, every expectation of ethical conduct. Alameda Research wasn't just another large client on FTX. Oh, no. It was the client. It operated with a level of privilege, a degree of internal access, that would send shivers down the spine of any seasoned financial auditor. Alameda wasn't subject to the same strict margin requirements, the same risk parameters, the same scrutiny as everyone else. Why? Because it was essentially operating from within the exchange itself. It held a uniquely privileged position, a backstage pass to the financial machinery of FTX. While ordinary users had to post collateral, meticulously manage their risk, and adhere to strict borrowing limits, Alameda seemed exempt. It could borrow virtually unlimited funds that, critically, belonged to FTX as customers. This wasn't just preferential treatment, this was a fundamental subversion of trust. It was as if the vault key, the master key, had been handed directly to the very entity that was supposed to be kept at arm's length. The system was designed, or perhaps designed, to allow Alameda to leverage FTX's entire liquidity pool, effectively treating customer deposits, your money, their money, as its own personal, infinite credit line. This unchecked, internal pipeline, this bridge of privilege, became the direct conduit for the alleged commingling of customer funds. Customer assets, deposited onto FTX with the expectation of safekeeping, were allegedly funneled directly into Alameda's speculative, high-risk trades. The lines between exchange assets and trading firm assets didn't just blur, they vanished. In the feverish pursuit of expansion, of growth at any cost, the most sacred rule of finance was violated. Thou shalt not touch customer funds. But Sam Bankman-Fried, through this unholy alliance, allegedly allowed Alameda to do precisely that. It was a ticking time bomb, built directly into the very core of his supposed financial marvel. Every successful trade by Alameda, every speculative gamble, was funded not by its own capital, but by the unwitting trust of millions. And every loss, every devastating misstep, chipped away at the foundation of FTX itself. This wasn't merely poor management. This was an architectural decision. A deliberate, or perhaps delusional, choice to empower one entity at the direct expense, and ultimate peril, of its customers. The stage was set. The pieces were in place. The unholy alliance, once a secret, would soon expose its true, devastating cost, and drag an entire empire down into the abyss. The crypto tide, once roaring with unbridled optimism, began to recede. Not slowly, but with a chilling, accelerating speed. The heady days of parabolic growth, where every risk seemed to pay off, were over. A brutal, unforgiving bear market was settling in. For a while, the sprawling empire of Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX, the sleek exchange, and Alameda Research, his ambitious trading firm, appeared resilient. A fortress, even. SBF, the boy wonder, the media darling, continued his relentless public relations blitz, testifying before Congress, gracing magazine covers. He projected an image of unwavering confidence, of strategic genius. But beneath that carefully constructed veneer of stability, deep within the heart of his seemingly impenetrable domain, the first cracks were not just appearing, they were widening. A precarious foundation, built not on bedrock, but on a mountain of highly illiquid assets and dangerously leveraged positions, was beginning to shift. The whispers of doubt, initially faint, grew louder. A storm was brewing. And this time, no amount of charismatic interviews or carefully worded tweets could hold back the gathering darkness. It was Alameda Research, SBF's aggressive trading arm, that bore the brunt of this seismic market shift. Their strategies, once widely profitable in a rising market, became a perilous liability as prices plummeted. They were not just taking risks, they were making colossal, speculative bets, often on highly volatile, obscure cryptocurrencies. Bets that, in this new, unforgiving environment, turned disastrous. The losses weren't isolated incidents, they were cascading, a torrential downpour of red ink that threatened to drown the firm. Every desperate maneuver, every attempt to double down and recover, only dug the hole deeper. The internal balance sheets, once carefully guarded secrets, now revealed a horrifying truth: Alameda was not merely struggling, it was bleeding profusely. The capital, once seemingly infinite, was vanishing. Pressure mounted on Sam. He had built this intricate web, this illusion of separate entities, but Alameda's impending collapse would inevitably drag FTX down with it. The stakes were no longer just about profit, they were about survival. Faced with an abyss, the imminent insolvency of Alameda, Sam Bankman-Fried made a decision. A breathtaking, unforgivable decision that would forever define his legacy. He reached into the very heart of FTX's trust. He reached for customer funds. Not a loan. Not an investment. But an unauthorized, illicit transfer. Billions. Siphoned silently, clandestinely, from the accounts of millions of users who believed their deposits were safe, segregated, sacrosanct. This wasn't a mistake, it was a calculated gamble, born of desperation and an almost messianic belief that he, and only he, could trade his way out of this impossible predicament. The idea was simple, yet profoundly criminal: use FTX customers' money to plug the gaping holes in Alameda's balance sheet. It was a betrayal of epic proportions. A cardinal sin in finance. And as those digital ledgers flickered, reflecting the movement of assets that were never his to touch, the fate of FTX, and Sam Bankman-Fried himself, was sealed. The cracks had not just appeared, they had ripped open, exposing the rot at the core of an empire built on sand, lies, and stolen trust. The fall was now inevitable. For years, Sam Bankman-Fried had cultivated an image, a financial wizard, a benevolent force in crypto. FTX, his gleaming exchange, stood as a beacon of stability, backed by billions. But beneath this meticulously constructed facade, a dangerous secret festered. On November 2, 2022, a quiet tremor began. It was a single, meticulously researched article published by CoinDesk, detailing the balance sheet of Alameda Research, Bankman-Fried's affiliated trading firm. But within its dry, financial prose lay a time bomb. The article revealed a staggering, unbelievable truth: Alameda's assets, its supposed bedrock of financial health, were not diversified. They were overwhelmingly comprised of FTX's own native token, FTT. Billions of dollars in FTT, held by Alameda. A token * created * by FTX. This wasn't just poor risk management. This was an ecosystem built upon its own, self-referential sandcastle. A house of cards, where one entity's perceived strength relied entirely on the other's fabricated value. The implication was stark, chilling: if FTT's value plummeted, Alameda would be instantly insolvent. And if Alameda went down, what then, for FTX? The immediate aftermath was not an explosion, but a slow, agonizing realization. Crypto Twitter, the industry's digital town square, began to buzz with an unsettling frequency. Analysts, investors, and ordinary users read the CoinDesk report again and again, the gravity of Alameda's precarious position sinking in. The air crackled with unease. Could FTX truly be so or exposed? The whispers of concern grew louder, morphing into shouts of alarm. And then, like a lightning bolt striking a parched landscape, came the catalyst. Thursday, November 6, Changpeng CZ Zhao, the enigmatic CEO of Binance, FTX's chief rival, stepped into the fray. With a single, calculated tweet, he delivered the death blow. Binance, he declared, would be liquidating its entire position in FTT. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of FTT, accumulated from Binance's early investment in FTX, would now be dumped onto the open market. It was a digital gauntlet thrown, a declaration of financial war. CZ framed it as risk management, a move to protect Binance's interests. But the message was crystal clear: Binance was abandoning ship. This wasn't merely a sale, it was an unequivocal vote of no confidence. The dam, already weakened by the CoinDesk revelation, could hold no longer. The market reacted instantly. Violently. Panic, raw and unyielding, seized the crypto world. Investors, witnessing Binance's dramatic exit, rushed to protect their own assets. This wasn't a slow trickle of withdrawals, it was a cascading tsunami. Users flooded FTX, demanding their money back. A classic bank run, but on a scale and speed that only the digital age could unleash. The price of FTT, Alameda's primary collateral, began to plummet, a free fall, wiping out billions in mere hours. Each drop in FTT's value further weakened Alameda, further exposing FTX's core vulnerability. The self-referential loop had become a death spiral. FTX, once hailed as a titan, found itself desperately trying to stem the bleeding, scrambling to process withdrawals, but the system was overwhelmed. Sam Bankman-Fried, the boy wonder, watched in horror as his meticulously crafted empire, built on illusion and a borrowed sense of stability, crumbled before his very eyes. The trust, once absolute, evaporated. The whispers of insolvency turned into a deafening roar. In just a few terrifying days, the foundation cracked, the walls buckled, and the entire house of cards, an intricate web of interconnected debt and inflated assets, collapsed into an abyss, taking billions of dollars and countless dreams with it. The game, it seemed, was finally over. As the digital sun set on what was once hailed as a beacon of innovation, a storm of unprecedented fury brewed. Whispers began, soft, then growing louder, across forums and social media. Users reported delays. Withdrawal requests not processing. A glitch? A temporary hiccup? No. What started as a trickle of concern quickly surged into a torrent of abject terror. The screens, once symbols of unprecedented wealth creation, now displayed a chilling, unresponsive void. Accounts, which minutes before held fortunes, now seemed to be locked away, inaccessible. Then came the unofficial confirmation, delivered not by FTX itself, but by the stark, undeniable reality: funds were not moving. Not a dime. Not a single token. The platform that promised seamless liquidity had, in a horrifying instant, become a digital vault with a broken key. A collective, guttural gasp echoed across the globe as millions confronted the chilling, inescapable truth: their money was trapped. The dream, for countless individuals, was rapidly morphing into a waking nightmare. Behind the scenes, the architect of this digital empire, Sam Bankman-Fried, was in a frantic, desperate scramble. The boy wonder, now stripped of his bravado, spent those agonizing hours in a blur of calls, pleading, bargaining, almost begging, for billions in emergency funding. A lifeline. A lifeline. He courted investors, venture capitalists, even rival exchanges, promising whatever it took, sacrificing future profits, offering what little collateral remained. Each phone call, each email, was a Hail Mary pass into an increasingly hostile, skeptical void. But the truth, the horrific scale of the deficit, was too vast, too undeniable. Potential saviors looked into the abyss and recoiled. Yet, even as his world imploded around him, SBF maintained a chillingly composed public facade. He took to Twitter. He spoke to the press. FTX is fine, he typed. Assets are fine. We don't comment on rumors, but we have enough to cover all client holdings. Lies. Calculated, audacious lies that poured gasoline on the burning embers of hope for millions, twisting the knife of betrayal deeper with every false assurance. The chilling realization dawned, not with a sudden crash, but with a slow, agonizing creep. For the retail investor who had put their life savings into what they believed was a secure platform, for the young professional who saw FTX as their path to financial freedom, for the retirees who trusted their pensions to the allure of crypto's promise, the money was gone. Not misplaced. Not frozen. Stolen. vanished into the convoluted, opaque maw of Alameda Research, sacrificed to the gambling habits and reckless decisions of a charismatic fraudster. The final betrayal was not just the halt of withdrawals, but the profound, personal violation of trust that accompanied it. Every tweet from SBF, every hollow reassurance, became a cruel taunt. The digital assets they had painstakingly acquired, the future they had meticulously planned, evaporated into thin air. Millions were left with empty screens, shattered dreams, and the bitter taste of a betrayal so absolute, so brazen, that it would forever redefine the very concept of trust in the digital age. A vast, global community, united in a shared catastrophe, now understood the devastating cost of a gamble made with other people's money. The digital world reeled, in a state of collective, disbelieving shock. FTX, once a celebrated titan of the cryptocurrency exchange landscape, heralded by its charismatic young founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, had not merely stumbled. It had collapsed, spectacularly, into a chasm of its own making. The speed of its descent was breathtaking, leaving a trail of shattered trust and billions in vanished customer funds. As the dust settled, or rather, as the financial magma cooled into a hardened crater, the question wasn't if something had gone wrong, but how something so fundamentally broken could have appeared so robust for so long. The immediate aftermath was a maelstrom of confusion, panic, and a creeping, sickening realization: this was not a simple market correction, nor even a catastrophic business failure. This felt different. Deeper. More insidious. The world demanded answers. It demanded accountability. And into this unparalleled financial disaster, a figure emerged, tasked with navigating the unthinkable: John Ray III, a man whose grim resume included untangling the epic fraud of Enron, now faced a challenge that would test even his seasoned resolve. Ray's arrival signaled the beginning of an unprecedented forensic deep dive. What he and his team found was not merely mismanagement, but a scene of such organizational anarchy, such blatant disregard for basic corporate governance, that it defied belief. This wasn't a company with poor accounting, it was a sprawling, multi-billion-dollar enterprise operating with an absolute absence of it. Imagine, no centralized record-keeping. Key decisions made through informal chats. Expenses approved with emojis. Customer funds, supposedly sacrosanct, commingled with corporate assets, and then quietly, systematically, siphoned off to its sister trading firm, Alameda Research. The initial disclosures painted a portrait of a financial institution run less like a global powerhouse, and more like a chaotic, personal piggy bank, its operations driven by the whims of a select few. It was a ghastly truth, slowly, painfully unspooling: FTX wasn't just built on shaky ground. It was built on no ground at all. A structure existing purely on paper, sustained by audacious promises and a chilling culture of unquestioning loyalty. But it was John Ray III's testimony before Congress that truly ripped away the final veil, exposing the rot at the core of the FTX empire. His words, delivered with a sober gravity born of decades navigating financial ruin, were nothing short of damning. He declared, unequivocally, that he had never, in his entire career, witnessed such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as he found at FTX. Think about that, a man who oversaw the wreckage of Enron, now stating this was worse. This wasn't negligence, this was a deliberate, calculated dismantling of every single safeguard designed to protect investors and maintain financial integrity. It was the unearthing of a labyrinth built not for innovation, but for obfuscation, a complex web of shell companies, phantom assets, and unsecured loans, all designed to hide the most fundamental fraud: the theft of customer money. The revelation was stunning. It laid bare the rotten core of FTX, not as a crypto venture gone wrong, but as a sophisticated, multi-billion-dollar scheme of deceit. This wasn't a collapse, it was an implosion, a meticulously constructed fraud finally succumbing to the undeniable weight of its own lies. And with Ray's testimony, the fight for justice, for the millions who lost everything, had just begun.
The dust settled, but the wreckage remained. A financial empire, built on ambition and perceived genius, had crumbled, leaving billions in losses. But as the initial shock faded, a new, more sinister truth began to emerge. The fall of FTX wasn't merely a business failure, it was something far more insidious. The grand jury indictments landed like thunderbolts, and then the courtroom doors swung open. Inside, a different kind of drama unfolded. Not the flamboyant promises of a crypto wunderkind, but the grim, unvarnished confessions of those closest to Sam Bankman-Fried. The very individuals who had helped build his empire were now tearing it down, brick by painful, damning brick. They were his inner circle, his trusted lieutenants, and their testimony would prove to be the emperor's undoing. Each witness walked to the stand, not as a defiant co-conspirator, but as a repentant informant, their voices tinged with a blend of regret and a chilling resolve to finally speak the truth. First came Gary Wang, the shy, brilliant co-founder, SBF's childhood friend and the technological architect of FTX. His voice, though quiet, resonated with the weight of revelation. He meticulously described the coded deception, the secret backdoor, a line of code, a simple command that allowed Alameda Research to borrow unlimited funds from FTX customer accounts. Without collateral and without their knowledge, Wang, the CTO, confirmed he had created this hidden mechanism. Who ordered it? Sam Bankman-Fried. Gary Wang's testimony was not hearsay. It was a technical dissection of fraud, a direct exposure of the system designed to steal. Then, Nishad Singh, FTX's director of engineering, stepped forward. Another loyalist, another mind behind the system. He painted a picture of a company built on a lie, where billions in customer funds were not merely mismanaged, but actively misappropriated, with SBF's direct instructions. Nishad confessed to knowing about the massive hole in Alameda's balance sheet and SBF's desperate attempts to cover it up using other people's money. This wasn't negligence. This was a calculated, deliberate betrayal, engineered from the very top. But it was Caroline Ellison, the former CEO of Alameda Research, SBF's on-again, off-again girlfriend, whose testimony ripped away the final layers of pretense. Her account was devastatingly intimate. She spoke not just of code or balance sheets, but of direct, personal conversations with Bankman-Fried. She described how SBF, her former boss and lover, had directed her to create misleading balance sheets, to deceive lenders. She detailed his full knowledge of the billions in customer funds that Alameda had plundered. She confirmed the secret line of credit, the one that never ended. Her voice, though often soft, carried the power of an insider, someone who had been privy to SBF's innermost thoughts and directives. She revealed his explicit instructions to pay off Alameda's massive debts using FTX customer deposits, knowing full well it was wrong. He was the one, she stated, who directed us to commit these crimes. Her words weren't speculation. They were an admission of guilt. Yes, but more profoundly, they were a direct, unvarnished indictment of Sam Bankman-Fried. The confessions piled up, each one a nail in the coffin of the FTX empire and its fallen king. They weren't just witnesses to fraud, they were participants, now testifying to the master architect of it all.
The opulent charade. The philanthropic veneer. The carefully curated image of a benevolent prodigy, all of it shattered. As the dust settled on the catastrophic collapse of FTX, a new, far more solemn stage was set, a courtroom in Lower Manhattan. This was not another venture capital pitch, not a chaotic trading floor. This was the crucible of justice. The world, still reeling from the shockwaves of billions lost, watched with bated breath as Sam Bankman-Fried, once hailed as crypto's golden boy, stood accused. The charges were damning: wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering. This was no longer about innovative finance, it was about outright deception. About an audacious scheme built on lies. The air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation, a silent, collective demand for answers. For accountability. For the truth behind the smoke and mirrors. This wasn't just his future hanging in the balance, it was the very trust in a nascent, volatile industry. A defining moment for crypto itself. The prosecution meticulously unraveled the tangled web of deceit. Through damning internal communications, through financial records laid bare, and perhaps most devastatingly, through the testimony of his closest confidants, those who had once believed in his vision, now forced to expose his betrayals. They spoke of a company built on a foundation of pilfered customer funds, funneled into risky investments, lavish lifestyles, and political influence. Sam Bankman-Fried, however, maintained a facade of confusion, of oversight rather than malice. His testimony was evasive, often contradictory, a desperate attempt to paint himself as an overwhelmed executive rather than the architect of a sprawling fraud. But the evidence was overwhelming. The truth, relentless in its pursuit, closed in. And after mere hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The courtroom held its breath. The silence was deafening until a single word echoed, shattering any lingering illusions: guilty. Guilty on all counts. A seismic tremor shook the room. The architect of the crypto empire, the man who once graced magazine covers, was now a convicted felon. His carefully constructed mythology eviscerated. The verdict wasn't just the end of Sam Bankman-Fried's fleeting reign. It was a somber, brutal reckoning for an entire industry. For the thousands of ordinary people who had entrusted their life savings to FTX, the verdict offered a glimmer of justice, but little solace. Their dreams, their financial security, had been irrevocably stolen, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and profound disillusionment. This wasn't merely a financial crime, it was a betrayal of trust on a monumental scale. For the crypto world, the fall of FTX and its subsequent legal judgment served as a harsh, undeniable lesson. It stripped away the veneer of endless innovation, exposing the dark underbelly where unchecked ambition and outright greed could flourish in the absence of stringent oversight. It was a clarion call, a demand for greater transparency, for robust regulation, for an end to the move fast and break things mentality when it came to people's money. Sam Bankman-Fried now faces decades behind bars, a stark, chilling testament to the devastating consequences of his actions. His story, once a beacon of disruption and wealth, now stands as a cautionary tale. A dark, indelible stain on the ledger of financial history. The era of the crypto cowboy, operating with impunity, was over. The game had changed. And the price of that change was exorbitant.